Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 151st edition of the Frank and Stan chat. And those of you watching on the video, you'll notice that at the bottom of the screen we have a friend of ours, Eddie Czestochowski. And I've been practicing that all day, Eddie, because I know you primarily as Battery Eddie. So thank you very much for joining us, Eddie.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. Stan, how are you this week?
Been a big week. We've had my grandson's first birthday, and of course, only recently came through the adoption order and everything. So it's been a really exciting week, and we're absolutely shattered.
Yeah, I know the feeling only too well. Anyway, Eddie, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and the job you have and perhaps some interests that you have?
Yeah, okay, no problem at all. My name's Eddie Czestochowski. For my sins, I run a battery company based up in South Shields. I set it up about 22 years ago. After working for 12 years for other people, I decided one day that I wanted to become self-employed. So I did, and I now employ 30 people. We basically make specialist battery packs for industry. Okay, so that would be portable power as opposed to electric vehicles, that kind of
Right.
thing.
So these are not your Nissan batteries, this gigafactory thing that they're
that's a shame, because what we do is we have something like 3,000 different designs. So our batteries go into things like data loggers or equipment that might measure noise level or sound level or air quality, or there's so many different applications, and that was part of the reason one of the reasons I love it is because there's something new every week. If you said to me you've got to go work in a battery factory making car batteries for the rest of my life, I don't think I would enjoy that very much, but no, I've been doing that for about 20 odd years now, and I really love it. I can't.
Yeah. So what did you do beforehand then? What sort of jobs did you have before you started this?
Well, I went to college in Manchester, did a HND in electronics, and then it's funny because my first job out of college, okay, I almost got a job as a technical author, okay, for one of the Frantic companies. But it took them that long to positively vet me. I think they were worried about my surname, with my dad being Polish. They thought I might have been some kind of sleeper spy. So in the meantime, whilst I was
Would
waiting,
have been the best of spies not to change your name first.
Well, yeah. So whilst I was waiting for this job to come through, I took a job in Oldham, which effectively got me three months internal sales, 3 months in the factory, and 3 months on the road. And after that 9-month period, which I thought was some kind of wonderful management training scheme, I actually got made redundant. But that gave me the realization that the bit that I really loved was the traveling technical sales engineer part of it, and that's what I kind of went into. Then for the next 12 years, I got into I kind of fell into it really, sort of selling batteries. I started off selling miners' cap lamps, would you believe?
Oh, really?
For a company in Oldham, you're quite in Denton. You're from Manchester, you know it well. Called Oldham Batteries, and then one thing led to another, and before I knew it, 12 years had gone by. I'd kind of spent many thousands of miles traveling the country, meeting different people, sorting different projects out. And after 12 years of that, I just decided, I wanted to kind of do something for myself. And at that time, my first daughter was 2 years old, and I decided that I wanted to kind of be a bit closer to home. And that's what we did. We actually moved it to the northeast,
right,
from Manchester, and then sort of set the business up when I was 37.
So have there been some hairy moments in those years, Eddie? Or has it all been sort of fairly plain sailing,
Well, to be honest, when you run your own business, I mean, I've got to be honest, the first 10 years of that business, they were a blur. You know, I mean, we grew every year. You know, I started as a one-man band. So it went from one person to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. Every year we just kept growing and growing and taking a bigger unit and a bigger thing until about 10 years ago we actually got to the point where I managed to actually build our own factory. So you know that was well, that was exciting at the time.
Does that
But
mean?
yeah, I mean, you know, I've been dead lucky because, you know, the kind of market that we're in, it's very nichey. You know, the battery industry is, everything needs batteries, you know, more and more and more. So you only have to look, say these days, I mean, even you're in schools, you know, schools have got CO2 monitors. In the old days, it would be a little PP3 battery. Now they want these monitors to talk to you know, a kind of a headquarters somewhere else, you know. So therefore, you need to have a much more. I mean, it's what's called Internet of Things. Everything is being remotely controlled by something, you know. And we might come into AI in a bit, but you know,
you have a passion for a hobby, don't you? Really, that actually you're trying to push into schools at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, chess. I mean, you know. Chess is one of those things that when I was at school, and again, I was at school in the late 70s, you know, sort of 77 onwards. Chess was kind of quite big in schools. Most schools played chess, you know. I then went to, so I played it constantly from about the age of 13 to the age of 18, 19, and got really good at it, you know. And then I completely stopped for the best part of 30 years. And the reason I took it up again was, I mentioned that I built a factory. Well, as in that period of building the factory, the final sort of 6 months of it, I underwent a real amount of stress. Okay. I didn't realize I was going through stress because I'm one of these people that, you know, I don't believe that you can get stress. You know, I mean, I had 25 years of running a business. Stress doesn't exist. It does, you know. I've got to tell you, you know. And what happened was, in the end, I went to see a hypnotherapist because I was having headaches and headaches and headaches, and I got desperate and I thought, you know, maybe I can get them hypnotized out. You know, they can hypnotize you to kind of stop smoking. So can they hypnotize you to kind of forget that you've got headaches? So I went along to this woman, and we had a couple of sessions. And one thing she said to me, and she made me realize that the one thing that I hadn't been doing for the last 20 odd years was doing anything for me. Everything was for the business, for the family, for the people I employed, and there was actually nothing that I could class as for me. So we chatted about various things, and she made me realize that, I mean, she said, you know, I remember she said, you've got to pick 5 things to do. So I think I've forgotten 3 of them, but I know one of them was to relearn Italian, okay, and another one was to take chess back up again, because I'd always said, well, chess is something I take up when I retire, you know.
Yes.
So I took it back up about 10 years ago now. And then the more I kind of got into it, the more I realized that actually a lot of the things that I learned in that period when I was at school, okay, I actually used throughout my life. And, you know, I couldn't, you know, the more and more you thought about it, the more and more you thought, well, yeah, that's why, you know, that's why I'm doing that. That's why I'm doing, that's why I think about strategies. That's why I think about plans. That's why I don't jump into things. That's why I, you know, and, you know, so I then decided that I started to have more time on my hands. You know, I was kind of, I'm not saying I'm going to retire, but I was thinking about building the team so that they could do more work.
Yeah.
And I started to do more things related to the community. And the one thing that I really enjoyed doing was playing chess. So again, you know how your life kind of flows on, you know. I mean, I took it up to do a certain thing. COVID came along, okay, and then I kind of realised actually, the thing that I really enjoy is teaching young children. Well, not young children especially, but people that come to you and say, "Can't play chess; it's too complicated," you know. And I just love proving them wrong and saying, "It's not complicated," you know. And I particularly enjoy teaching young children because their minds are like sponges, you know. They're absolutely like sponges, you know. So we've managed to run a. And I apologize if I'm talking too much. You stop me, okay?
No, you carry on.
Well, I managed to I got involved with a charity called Chess in Schools and the Communities. Okay, and I sort of said to them, look, you know, I can get something sorted in our local library. So I've been running a chess for all session for about 5 years in our local library on a Saturday morning. And what that did was, because we were playing in a kind of a very visible environment, not kind of in some porky backstreet pub, or, you know, we were in the hub of a library. We got all sorts of people coming past, and I used to get people like little children where their parents might be the school governor, you know. And so we managed to actually get a local school to set up an after-school club. Okay, because again, I don't know what it's like in Manchester, but in our town, there are not many schools that actually have after-school chess clubs or that kind of thing.
I suspect they used to be, didn't they, Stan? Did you have chess clubs in your?
I was Eddie's reminding me of my my childhood, and yeah, we had a chess club, and I'm just remembering as Eddie's talking there of a friend of mine who I showed him how to play chess, who within weeks was far better than me, and within probably a year was one of the top chess players in school. And you just think, that's not fair. That could have been me.
Well, that's what I see, and that's what we see, that some of the best players are actually the young ones. You know, I mean, you know, the best player in the Northeast is about 14. You know, it's crazy. You know, usually it's a bit like me. My dad taught me how to play when I was about 8 or 9. Before long, you can beat him, and then you don't want to play with him anymore. You know, and then you play with the neighbours, and then before you know it, you know, you just get better. And you don't. The thing about it's anything you do. In fact, I was looking back. Our school had a bridge club. Would you believe?
Yeah.
Do kids even know what bridge is now? I don't think so, do they?
Well, I remember being at secondary school, Eddie, and if ever because all the teachers played bridge at lunchtime, and if they were short of a player, they'd come into the common room and just ask for somebody to come and join them. So a lot of kids, you know, in sort of lower sixth, learned how to play bridge through going into the staff room and being taught by the staff. And of course, you felt very privileged to be amongst the staff, you know. So that's how I learned how to play bridge.
We had things as well, like a photography club,
yeah,
and a film club where the kind of films that ended up on BBC Two, you know, geographical things about the world, but on a Thursday you'd go into the geography room and there'd be probably 20 or 30. Watch some film you've no real interest in, and then wander home later.
I also remember hearing. I mean, there used to be one decent stereo system in our school in the music room, and at lunchtime, when we were in sort of like last year of secondary school, the music teacher had come in with a vinyl that he'd bought, and he'd put it on, and we'd all sit around the room, sort of in effect judging it, deciding on it. And that was the first time I ever heard Sergeant Pepper's, was in that environment, where I don't think I was old enough really to really appreciate it, but there were a couple of lads in the room, students, who was, oh, that's amazing, listen to that. And one of them was a pianist, Sean, and he was listening to stuff way in the back, you know, the George Martin stuff. That's what he was into. And I remember that even to this day, you know, and that wasn't that was never a lesson. That was just stuff you did, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, that's the thing.
Eddie, we can chat about this till the cows come home.
I know. Well, that was
Go
the
on.
thing for me being at school. I mean, I went to a school where you learnt when I was, I don't know, I did about 11 O levels, if I look back, I can't remember much of it, but I can tell you who the chess teacher was, and I can tell you all the places we went to, and all the things that you learnt, I've obviously kind of stuck in my brain. And that's what I try to do to the kids that I get involved with now. I try to, you try to subconsciously ask them about who the King of England is and who the Queen of England. You kind of throw in a few facts as you're playing.
I think, Eddie, that tactic is just to try and beat those kids. I mean, you can throw loads of stuff in, give them
Just a distraction.
some algebraic equation for you to.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on.
Moved on from look over there while I move the pieces around a bit.
Yeah.
Right, Stan, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, it's rather depressing following all that excitement about playing chess and memories. This conference that took part, the National Conservatives, which I noticed some people have now shortened to NatC, which is not a good way of describing a conference or a group of people. But it was some of the outrageous things that were said, and there's been no real response in the press. Some I don't even know who this person was, who said, there's nothing wrong with being nationalistic if the Germans hadn't just mucked it up a couple of times.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Mucked it up.
I know.
Millions dead. It's just unbelievable.
I think the reassuring thing for me is that you never saw how many people were in the room.
No, but it's being broadcasted away.
I know. The number was about 60.
We've got the Home Secretary there. The Home Secretary I think anybody can only describe it as a far right wing group spouting far right wing ideologies.
Yeah.
And of course, then in the midst of it all, we had a head teacher. Now, I'm not sure, but I thought it wasn't a role of head teachers to take a political view.
You're not allowed to take well, you're not allowed to take. You've got to be careful about what you say to students. I suppose the issue here, because there are teachers who stand as local councillors or even as MPs, but what you're not allowed to do is to actually use your influence. You've got to remain sort of balanced, a bit like a BBC reporter, isn't it?
Yeah. I just the whole thing worries me.
Ooh, we've got a little bit of interference there, have we?
In what way?
I can hear something. Mike, can you hear at your end, Stan?
I can, yeah.
I think this is AI.
AI.
System. The government's built the system. Any criticism of the government, immediately this thing springs into life.
We'll have to differentiate that AI from the AI in Manchester where I live, or Salford, which is just AI.
AI. Hey up.
Okay. Right, Stan. Eddie, let's move on to you. What's caught your eye this week?
I was going to say, mentioning AI, I mean, that certainly is something that's raised its head on my agenda this week. It's one of these things that I started to think about a few weeks ago, and I think I tried to get an account with them, and I couldn't. Okay, but I was at a meeting yesterday, and it spurred me to kind of go away and try again. So I did try again, and I got an account with Chat GTP this morning, and I've got to say it's blown my mind in terms of what it does. You ask a simple question and it can create full presentations. So that's caught my eye this week. And it did make me think about how schools are going to adopt it, in what way. Is it good, is it bad?
Well, it's interesting. I was at a conference.
I listened to the Beatles singing Oasis songs this week, which, and doing a fine job of it as well.
But I was at.
Well, again,
I
think there's a lot going on in America, isn't there, about some of the people across there, some of the politicians across there, where they're creating fake news. which is so realistic that you're not sure that it's fake.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. But I was at the announcement yesterday, where Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, announced that there was going to be a vocational qualification called the MBAC, and James Eldon, head teacher of one of the large secondary schools in Manchester, who's going to be a guest on here in a couple of weeks' time, was presenting with Andy Burnham, and he's told the story of how he would try and persuade young children, not students, not to study health and beauty and hairdressing, stuff like that, until he then went to an AI seminar where they said, a lot of jobs, like solicitors, accountants, all of it, they're going to be taken over by AI. But the jobs that are not are going to probably be those around that care for people, like hairdressers.
Yeah.
Because it's very unlikely that a robot will be able to cut your hair in the exact way that you want it. So he immediately thought, oh, I better eat those words back again, because it's all those practical skills, isn't it? A little bit of some artistic element to it, or some sort of caring, touching sort of feel. That's the future. So
I think Eddie needs, just before we recorded, Eddie was telling us some of the things he tried with Chat GTP.
Come on, Eddie, what were they?
And
I
think your Shakespeare one is one that...
Well, yeah, I mean, I was messing about with it, yeah, and just kind of testing it, seeing how good it was, and asking it to write poems about batteries in the style of Shakespeare. It's just bizarre. I mean, honest to God, it was like, it was blowing my mind. I mean, as I said, I said to one of my guys, I said, if I asked you to create a presentation about battery technology, how long do you think it might take you? And he wasn't aware of AI, he hadn't really touched it. And he said, well, probably take me about a week, to kind of gather all the information and then formulate it. And I said, well, watch this. And I just put a few words into the AI thing, Chat GPT, and literally within a minute we had 3 or 4 pages of a presentation. It's one of my other guys, who's a computer whiz kid. He's been using it for a few weeks now to write code, and he said that it's really accurate. One piece of code that would have taken him 2 hours to put together, the thing created within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
He tested it; it worked fine. It was so that you can see there are going to be. It's going to save a lot of time in some instances, but I think it's this thing about how clever is it and what's it learning from you, And again, I don't know whether you watched Laura Kunsberg on Sunday morning, and there was the CEO of I think Octopus, and he said that within 6 weeks of using it, they've been using it to write emails to customers, and it saved something like 250 people's worth of jobs. I mean, he then backed it up by saying he employed 5,000 people, so but kind of smoothed over the fact that actually it is going to lose jobs, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know when you lose teachers, or I don't know. You always need a teacher, won't you?
I think the musicians industry are objecting to it quite strongly, because it could potentially be an end to the creativity of writing new songs.
Yeah, I think I saw on I think Sting was being presented up with some Ivor Novello Award today, I think, and he mentioned the fact that he likened it to kind of films using kind of CGI, But I think it won't take long before people are that used to it that they won't think about it anymore. It's just amazing.
We've just got to embrace it, though, haven't we? But also, I think there was this point about every country will have to have some sort of regulation or regulator. Obviously, the EU would have theirs. America, will look as though they're going to have theirs fairly quickly. But obviously, the British regulator will, now that we're not part of the EU, we'll have to have our own regulations for that. So anyway, what caught my eye was the PIRL, that's PIRL, results on reading, which is about 50 countries take these tests, and I think the last one was in 2016, and in England, got to be careful. It's not in Wales, Scotland, or Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland are in it, I think, but in England, we are 4th in the world, which is amazing. And the government have connected this with the drive they've had to offer phonics, a particular way of teaching phonics. And ministers have been out there this week saying, oh, it's great, which is great news. You know, I'm not decrying that, but I think it's a bit of a stretch to say this is all down to phonics, you know, but obviously they've made such a big thing about the teaching of phonics. I understand the reasons why they wanted to connect it, but I truly don't believe it's quite as clear cut as that. But so we're 4th in the world in the ladder, if you see it as a ladder, and that's great. However, we are 29% of English students said that they very much like reading. Internationally, the proportion that said that was 42%. So we have very high reading levels, but much lower enjoyment levels. So the thing for me is, you know, it would be much, I do think that they probably need to be fairly close to each other, because I think we're going to end up with kids who can read, who basically don't enjoy doing it, so are not going to do it. So, you know, we've got our little, the government obviously don't like this this discussion because we've got the noise back again. But yeah, so I think that's a big problem, really. And I do wish that the government wouldn't simply just jump onto the old bandwagon around, well, we introduced phonics, therefore everything in English is going to be down to phonics. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a bit, the test is which students will, when they be 16, 17, when they pass university, how many of them are enjoying reading, as opposed to reading because the next stage of the exam involves reading.
Don't know what that noise is, but we're going to carry on because we've got virtually to the end here. Eddie,
I can't. I've got this. I can't hear any noise. You're perfect.
It's at our end anyway. At the end of each of these chats, we ask our guests to identify one thing they'd like to introduce that would improve education in England. So go on, Eddie. Let's have it from you.
Well, you know, I've got to tell you that from my point of view, I really think they should introduce chess as a taught subject, not just an after school club that, you know, that some people use as kind of cheap childminding. I mean, actually getting professional tutors in to spend, which they do actually. They do in Teesside. They're quite good at Teesside, but in our neck of the woods, there's nobody. You know, it's not there. You know, so and I don't know what it's like in Manchester, but I do think that based on what I got out of it, what I can remember of my time learning chess and playing chess from 13 to 18, you know, it's taught me so much, and I just think that that's what I would do, you know, if I was the leader.
Well, thank you very much.
Time left, yeah, Eddie.
I know.
You've got your own factory. You've done that job now. That's sorted now. On to world leadership next.
No. So what would you do then? What's is it just me that gives an idea?
Well, we've never been asked that question, but I would like. I think I'm very keen on we over-test children. We give them far too many tests, and in primary schools now, the tests have become so important at the end of primary school that basically they're just taught the tests. So a lot of the stuff that you're talking about here, Eddie, there would be some space for that sort of initiative, but that's gone because the teachers feel so wedded, as if they're wedded to getting a good result in the test. And that's even worse in secondary school. Somebody said to me their child is doing their GCSEs and they have got 27 tests to do for their GCSEs. 27 tests.
Well, mine would be that to link experience to the curriculum, so that not only do you have to say what we're going to teach, you have to say how are the children going to experience this, and have a range of ways. So it might be going to the outdoors. It might be seeing a factory work. It might be going on a residential together. But part of learning is what you experience, and that's what you remember. Those are the things that stick with you. Not, as you said before, not the lessons that you had on maths when you were 11, but actually the fact you went on a school trip the week after is the thing that sticks.
A shout out for our granddaughter Hattie. She went on safari this week.
Right.
She went to Knowsley Safari Park. To her, she's 8. She has been on safari. Honestly, was the going on the coach, sitting with her friends, seeing lions, seeing giraffes, seeing monkeys, all of this to her in the wild. She hasn't stopped talking about it.
But I think things like, I mean, something I did with my kids when we were doing volume, we invented soap powders, and we priced soap powders up by volume. And I managed to get a local soap making company to give us empty boxes. So they opened the boxes, we filled them with the desired amount, worked out what the volume was, what the space would be, and it was all experiential. I'm sure if you ask those kids now, they'd remember doing that project. They might not remember the maths of volume and why, but they would remember doing what they did.
Well, we're getting involved. I'm involved with a little project where this company have given some money to set up a kids competition, and it's all to do with wind power, and they've asked the kids to kind of come up with crazy ideas. Okay, and then they've picked out 4 of these crazy ideas to go into an exhibition. So I got nominated together with another company to kind of bring one of these ideas to fruition.
Oh, wow.
And this little kid's idea, who's only about 9, is to create. I mean, it won't work, but he's only 9. Okay, was to create windmills on the wing mirrors of cars, so that as it drives along, it creates power and it does things, So anyway, the little lad's prize will be to go around our factory and to go around another company's factory, and then we'll kind of produce a kind of working model of this.
Oh, wow.
A mocked-up model of this. But we were saying that little kid now, will probably remember that.
Yeah.
In his whole, and it might even spur him to kind of. We're hoping that it spurs him to go into engineering,
Yeah.
or that kind of thing, So you're right. You need to give people experiences.
He's not a million miles. I think is it Japan where there are things down the middle of the motorways,
Yes.
and as the cars go past, the wind of the car spins them round, and they generate electricity to light the motorway.
There you go. Yeah. Well, I think one of the other, there was 4 winners, and one of them was something to do with creating a bit like that, but it was to do with creating a kind of some kind of tunnel across the motorway so turtles could cross the motorway.
Oh, right.
I mean, how these kids come up with their ideas? And it's all powered by a windmill, and not, Well, the exhibition will be at our local library from September to November. Come and see it. Or I'll send you a link to the.
Can I thank you very much, Eddie, for the chat?
Yeah,
it's been an absolute pleasure, and that's probably 40 minutes, and I bet it felt like 4.
Wow. Yeah.
We'd love, come back and join us. We've got guests until the end of this year, and some early into 2024. But I'll send you another link, Eddie, and we'll get later
when
in the
you
year.
Get somebody to come up talk about chess, I can tell you at the moment in our neck of the woods, it's the fee-paying schools and what we call the posh schools. They do that as a matter of course.
Yes.
It's the normal school, the everyday schools. That's what I'd like to see it happen.
Well, on that note.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. We're back next week. We have another guest with us next week, and enjoy your weekend and what have you. So thank you once again, Eddie.
Thank you.
Cheerio, everybody.
Thank you.